The stories I could tell from hosting 5 yoga retreats in 3 years with less than 5 years of teaching experience and always less than 10K followers on Instagram, and also not a lot of a big following in terms of teaching regularly in studios. I do now, I guess as a disclaimer, have more than 10,000 followers on Instagram, but I say that specifically because that was one of the things that originally deterred me from wanting to start hosting, was that I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel like I had the audience size. And spoiler alert, you actually don't need that. There's a lot of people who will come through for you that are going to surprise you immensely. So, that being said, the most important thing in getting ready to host a yoga retreat, if you're feeling the urge, or maybe you've done it before, but you want to do it differently this time, is to get yourself ready. That's more important than any of the details. And I don't mean just like get yourself ready as in you need more trainings and this and that. I mean, trainings are important, don't get me wrong. But what I mean is when you are in a state of mind that you are thinking clearly, you are present, you are breathing, you don't feel like you can't breathe because you're anxious and you're worried and trying to control so many different things, you make a lot better decisions. You are able to trust yourself to deal with difficult things when they come up. Because, man, yoga retreats, it's just like anything and everything can happen. And I can only imagine as you keep going and keep hosting that you just amplify the amount of experience that you have. But what I'm bringing to you today to give you my little credentials for being able to talk to you about hosting is, of course, not that I've been hosting for 20 years. No. And that's why I want to talk to you about it, because all of this is so fresh in my mind. I remember the very first moment that I sat down to make the info packet for my first yoga retreat. I didn't even have a website. I had to create the PDF on Canva, and then I linked it and put it in Google Drive so that people could access it. That's how I promoted my first retreat, is using that PDF, right? So I'm here to talk to you about this creation of the idea and also the behind the scenes of you as the organizer, the teacher, the educator, the entertainer, the finance person, the all of the above, perhaps, because the last 5 retreats I have hosted, they have not been through an agency. I have often not had help, especially on the admin side of things. And in this last retreat, I actually hosted it entirely on my own. I didn't even have a support teacher, which was a whole experience of its own that I'm ready to talk to you about. So I'm going to tell you stories today, but I'm also going to give you tangible list of things that you can kind of run through. Maybe if you're not quite at the point where you're going to organize your retreat, or you might be listening to this where you're about to head off on hosting your retreat and you just want a little energetic touch up. Whatever that is, this is going to be applicable to you. And I'm going to give you the lay of the land, the 7 different ways to feel ready and to feel bold enough, basically, to do what needs to be done, because our gifts always require boldness to be brought into the world. That is absolutely key and in line with the year of the fire horse. Let us be bold this year. Let us bring these ideas that are sitting in the back of our minds out into the world so they can be experienced by all, and also so that we can start to believe in our word, to start to become impeccable with our word. And we say, yes, I'm going to do this, or I want to do this, I am going to do it. And yeah, so these are the 7 different steps. And then I'll talk to you a little bit more about what the episode is going to look like. But some of you have been telling me that you like the tangible, listable episodes. So I'm giving you what you asked for. Number 1 is going to be to be prepared to be seen as you are. My favorite slogan for this is nothing to hide and nothing to prove. Number 2 is going to be about releasing control, taking action, evaluating what has happened as a result of that action, and then taking action again. Number 3, knowing that leading means recognizing other leaders and what you can do with that information. Number 4, embody abundance mindset. Give, 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 give. There is great glory in the giving. really. And if we're not able to come to the retreat hosting experience from that mindset, then I would flag that there, but we'll get into it. Number 5 is going to be about really seeing the people in front of you. Being able to really see people and to really see the people in front of you is a skill in itself. And it can make us feel a lot better, especially when things are not going as planned. Number 6, be bold. Decisively do what must be done. I've got some fun little stories for you here. And number 7 is about aftercare. So, after you have hosted the retreat, just as important to be there for yourself energetically in this moment, because if it is to be sustainable, right? How you feel about the experience and how you move forward in light of the experiences is really important. With all of this experience, I like to say that when the fruit is sweet, savor it. Savor it. Because this is just a moment in time. And every time that you host a retreat, it goes by like that. And if you are listening and you did happen to be on my last retreat, I don't know, maybe you didn't feel that it went by that quickly. Maybe you did, whatever your experience of it was. Do know that I'm going to give some behind the scenes things into the retreat and how it was for me hosting that on the back end in ways that, of course, you're welcome to listen to, but also in ways that I probably didn't share with you just from a level of professionalism. And in order to keep your experience carefree as much as I could. So do be aware that you'll be getting some of the nitty gritty behind the scenes, at times chaotic, and at times truth, how I was feeling in each and every moment. But you're welcome to listen along. And at the very, very end of the episode, I'm going to tell you about a magical experience that I had with a gardener in Costa Rica. I'll call it my magical gardener story. And it's going to steal the whole thing in. It's a really beautiful story, so make sure that you listen all the way to the end of the episode for that one. By the way, if you are listening, I would super appreciate it if you would subscribe to my show. It's still about 20 to 30% of listeners are subscribed, so please double check if you are subscribed or not, and maybe you're newer to the show. Regardless, I'd appreciate that support. And if you would drop me a rating as well and consider sharing this show with a friend or on social media. I see all the time if you share an episode on social media. I try not to miss any of them. It makes me so happy. I do a little dance of joy. So if you want to make me dance with joy, consider sharing the show on social media as well. As I mentioned, I'm going to be sharing my stories during this episode because, truthfully, at the end of the day, the only thing that we really remember as humans, for whatever reason, as best intentions as we have with making our lists and taking our notes, when we go to tell somebody about something that we have consumed or listened to, what we tell them often are the stories. And so you will see my stories in there. And I honestly wanted to tell you the story of why it has taken me a little bit of time, because the retreat ended at the end of January and it is now February 17th as I am recording this episode. Especially from this retreat, I've just been bursting with stories. And I've been so antsy and so excited to tell you all of them that every time I sit down to go through my notes, I was like, I don't even know where to start. There's so many things to say. There's so much to share. And it's taken me a moment because, truthfully, there's been a lot of things going on. Right after the retreat, I had about a week of vacation time, which consisted of the day that the retreat ended, driving nearly all the way to Panama, like 8.5 hours to get right to the edge of Corcovado National Park, and then waking up the next morning at 4 a.m. to get on a fast boat ride out into the middle of nowhere to a place called Sirena, Estación Sirena, where you can only reach by boat or by 8-hour hike, which truthfully, the 8-hour drive plus the 8-hour hike after the retreat, it was feeling like a little bit much, so took the boat and we arrived there, and I was expecting to be in this blissful, calm nature environment where I could sit down with my journal and process the experience of just hosting the yoga retreat that I had. And however, when we arrived, what I was met with was a ranger station that had a capacity for 100 people, and we were sleeping in a giant bunk hall. So imagine like infinity bunk beds with mosquito nets over them. So they're just one after another. There's no fans or anything. It is incredibly hot. The bugs are relentless. And rather than having space to do things, there were not even enough chairs for everybody. Like in the lounge area, there were only about 20 chairs. So we're there, it's at peak capacity. And suddenly I find myself like, where I don't even have my own space. Like, what is going on? And luckily, our bunks were sort of near the edge, right? So there were some people in the middle of this giant rectangular structure who were zero airflow, just like right in the pit of people. And I've stayed in lots of hostels. I'm good with that. But this was another experience. I've really never experienced anything like it. You think maybe I'll hear the nature noise. No, 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 no. What you hear is the noise of humanity snoring, farting, bottles dropping, headlamps shining all around. All alarms, like 60 alarms, went off all at once at 4 a.m. and everybody's kind of like rushing around because they want to go and see the animals, because that's what you do in Sirena, is you get up and you walk to go see the animals. It was the most overstimulating thing to follow up the yoga retreat that I could have ever anticipated. So it's very funny, but that experience led into so many beautiful synchronicities, which will come in future episodes. It's not the place for them today, because I know that we're here to talk about the yoga retreat hosting process. And, but in light of that as well, when I got home, I had 2 episodes. I actually had somebody fly out to be on the podcast. And over the past 2 months, couple of months actually, my listenership on the podcast has been doubling. Stay with me for a second while I grab a little sip of tea. And so it's fascinating, I've talked about it before, but there's this moment where you have sort of a fear, oh, people aren't listening. And then you have the opposite of that. You're like, oh, wow, people are listening. What should I say? Now there's people listening, right? And so for me right now, it's been this process of things are starting to heat up. And that's what happens in the entrepreneurship world, at least from what I've seen so far in my 3 years of experience in this world, is that there's boom and bust cycles. And right now we are booming. We're doing things, we're going places that we haven't before, and sometimes it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose. So hang with me if if I sound a little bit different than usual. It's because things are a little bit different, but I'm settling back in. I've got a move coming up as well, just signed a lease on a new apartment, so I'll tell you guys all about that. But I feel like that's helpful context to know, and if you are a listener of this podcast, why sometimes there's a little bit more of a lag time to get everything caught up with where I am right now. And yeah, but I'm very, very happy that you are here with me right now. And I'm also super happy to tell you this is a huge, huge gift. And I really hope that you take advantage of this if you are listening, especially if you've been hearing me talk about OFFERINGTREE, because right now we are giving away a free year of OFFERINGTREE. Literally everything that you need for your yoga business. It takes 10 seconds to enter. So go and click the link that's in the show notes and just get your name in the hat. You've probably heard me talk before about how OFFERINGTREE is a partner of this podcast, and they are a great all-in-one business platform for yoga teachers. So whether you are just starting out or if you are looking to ditch your makeshift, expensive grouping of all these different softwares and subscriptions that you're using to try to run your yoga business, this is your opportunity to get a professional setup for free. To enter, go to offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew giveaway by March 5th. And for real, y'all, this could change your entire year. I mean, this is 1 year of free website building and hosting, 1 year of on-demand library, of selling courses, of setting up registration and booking for your classes and for everything that is a part of your yoga business. Again, you can head to offeringtree.com/Shauna Crew giveaway And the winner will be announced via email on March 6th. I want to tell you that currently the giveaway is limited to legal residents of the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, y toda mi gente in Costa Rica. Of course, giveaway terms and conditions apply, so please be sure to review those as well. That makes me smile. I'm excited for that one. Okay, number 1. Be prepared to be seen as you are. Nothing to hide, nothing to prove. This little mantra, nothing to hide, nothing to prove, has been so instrumental in everything that I do. And it's not to say that I'm perfect at it, but it's helped me when I had that experience of, okay, nobody's listening or nobody's signing up or nobody's coming or, I'm feeling that sort of sensation of lack. And it's also helped me when I've had people come and tell me, that which started happening last year, that some people found me via Spotify because they listened to my podcast, and that's how they ended up wanting to come to my retreat. It's helped me in that moment too, where it's like, oh my gosh, am I the same as am I the same in person as I am on here? Like, what are people going to think? Like, are they going to like my classes? I'm here talking all the time about teaching yoga, blah, 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 blah. Like, what if it's underwhelming? And you start to ask yourself all of these questions, and it's like, no, nothing to hide and nothing to prove. I am what I am. I'm a human. Probably the reason, if you feel connection with me, is that you see parts of yourself in me. I help you see parts of yourself that already exist. It's not that I'm anything special or beyond anything that you are. Not at all. And when you think about that like that, it just like releases the pressure from all of it. And so it's funny, I got a total test because I've been really trying to show up and share about things like my imperfections and my bad angles, and to talk about the truth of the reality of my situation, and to share things like even close-ups of my skin, my real skin, and like how I am, and not to put on some sort of a filter or anything like that. And it's hilarious because I realized when I arrived at the retreat that I had forgotten something that was very important to me. If you know me, you will know that I have always been the very prepared friend out of the group. I'm like the one who has a little pack of bags of like emergency supplies, which consists mostly of a granola bar, some Pepto-Bismol, but I pack all of my things very intentionally, and I have a very limited skincare routine, but I have a face wash that I like to use. And I forgot that face wash. So I had no face wash for the entire time during this last 2 weeks. And I was kind of worried about it, truthfully, because it's like it's really hot, and I was like sweating, and I was coating on a whole layer of sunscreen, and then I would like sweat again and put more sunscreen and swim in the ocean. I kind of try to like scrub it off. And at a certain point, I could feel like this layer of grease develop on my face. I just looked around, I took some hand soap, and I was like, here we go. Just gonna smear this on my face. And I'd use a little bit of like hand soap every couple days to just remove the layer of grease. And I was like, this is your opportunity. You don't need to have perfect skin. You tell everybody that all the time. So who gives a shit, right? Show up. This is how you're going to be showing up. And you know what happened to my skin? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. Nothing notable happened. So, I don't know. Should I quit the face wash? I don't know. No, I'm just kidding, y'all. I'm gonna keep washing my face because I do enjoy the feeling of a clean face. But anyways, as I was preparing to be seen before this retreat, beyond just the superficial example that I'm telling you about, that was really the least of my worries, as you will find out in just a moment when we get into releasing control and change and pivoting and things like that. But I was honestly feeling before this retreat shaky with anxiety, and I was feeling imposter syndrome. And I knew that I had a very specific amount of time left to get myself back up into my power, and that I owed it not only to myself, but to each and every person who was going to attend that retreat to show up in the best state that I could. It was so easy in that moment to blame all of the people that I felt like had let me down in the preparation for this retreat and the things that weren't fair that were happening, that I got swept away into almost sort of this negativity. And it's funny because what actually got me out of it was something that our taxi driver told us. When we were on our way, we tried to rent a car initially and it didn't work out. So we actually had to hire a taxi last minute to just drive us all the way to the ferry terminal and then get off there and walk on with our bags. And just on the other side, when we got off the ferry, just figure out our transportation in that moment, right? And our taxi driver, though, he was talking about this experience that he had. And he told us that he was on his way home from work about 10 years ago and he got into a really severe accident and he had a lot of complications that took many years for him to overcome. And in his moment of weakness, pretty much everybody in his life besides his family stopped interacting with him. He said that his girlfriend that he was seeing at that time called and said that she would come and check in with him in the hospital, and he said that he's still waiting to this day, that he's never, heard anything from her since. And he hit this really, really low point. But what he's built for himself after that fact is an outlook on life where he absolutely savors each moment of life. And while he wouldn't wish the accident on anybody, he wouldn't give up the grace that it gave him, essentially. My rough translation. It was a lot more beautiful the way that he said it in Spanish. But one of the things that he said is that no hay razón por la cual ver el punto negro en una hoja blanca. There's no reason to just look at the black point on a white piece of paper. So you imagine you have a white piece of paper and you take a pen and you make one dot with your pen on that paper, and then you just stare at that point and you ignore all of the other pristine space around it and you just fixate on that one point. And yet that is what happens. So often we fixate on our pain, on something that's gone wrong. And I just remembered that. And I remembered that outlook on life that he had. And it's all these things that we know. But when we get swept away into the emotion of feeling like we're not feeling magnetic and we're feeling like we're unsure of ourselves and we're not decisive, that is the one that gets me always, when I can feel myself just wavering between decisions, like I don't trust myself. When I notice that I don't trust myself, like I wasn't trusting myself before the retreat, it's a time to take a big step back very quickly, to set everything aside, everything that I needed to fix, quote unquote, because of things that had fallen through as a result of things that didn't feel like my fault, but I'm the leader, and so I must take accountability for all of them at the end of the day. That's my role. That's what I signed up for in this experience. I did this real sweaty practice and I stuck with my meditation practice, and I just trusted. I trusted that even though it was like a 24-hour deadline where I had to get myself back up to speed, that it would happen by slowing down, essentially, before trying to speed up and fix everything instantaneously. Expectations, a lot of times, are the enemy of our happiness, and they're also the enemy of our confidence. If we are relying on some sort of external circumstances to all come into alignment in order to prove our worth. So just check yourself whenever you're thinking about the experience turning out exactly as you want it to be. Number 2, release control, take action, evaluate, and take another action. I like to think about life like carving from edge to edge. And if you're not a skier, this might not make a lot of sense to you, but let me try to describe it to you because I think it's a very valuable analogy to use, which is where when you're skiing, and especially when you're on a single ski, you can't just go straight behind the boat. Let's talk about water skiing in this example. I should specify I've actually never snow skied in my life, so I can't speak to snow skiing, but I imagine it's something similar. A slalom water ski, you are on basically one skinny board behind the boat. And if you try to just go straight, what happens is that you get real squirrely and you fall. But when you are turning, when you are carving from side to side, you can go for forever and ever. You're carving from edge to edge. And that's the real fun in skiing, is carving from edge to edge. It's the same even if you're on a double ski, for example, or if you're on a wakeboard or something like that, or maybe you're on an inner tube, you've gone tubing before. The fun is not just being behind the boat like, I'm just going straight, status quo, everything's good, nothing unexpected, right? The fun is that carving from edge to edge where you're like, ooh, is it gonna work out? How is it gonna go? And then you whip back across the center, and you're not ever trying to make all of the problems go away or foresee exactly how every single curve and change that you will experience in life is before it happens. It's like you're trying to feel comfortable with something that you haven't yet experienced, and it doesn't work like that. It's very important. It does not work like that. You can't be experienced with something that you haven't ever before done. And that's a good thing. So two really big changes, curveballs happened uh, that I would like to speak to. And it was funny because one of them actually happened on the day of the retreat that I had put the theme of pivot. Life was like, oh, you say you can handle pivot and change? Like, here you go. Here's a test exactly for Tuesday. So when I get there and I was trying to pay up all the bills, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pay for 4 breakfasts this day, this day, and this day. And then the receptionist very nicely was like, no, 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 it's 3. And I was like, no, no, it's 4. We've got 4 mornings that we're going to be here, and I've got things that we're going to be doing. So, I don't want to be going off site or anything like that. And she's like, no, no, Tuesday we're closed. And I was like, you're what? You're what on Tuesday? Like, I've got a group coming, this and that. Like, I didn't know this information. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I pushed, I asked to speak to the manager. I was like, can you guys just can you hire somebody to come in and fry some eggs, cut up some fruit, like, what's going on? And they were like, no, 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 kitchen's closed on Tuesday. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, fine. And it's not really exactly the small town that you want to be trying to find a place for 13 people to have breakfast together very last minute. This was like 2 days before. But I ended up finding another space that I knew of because I had been many times to this town. So luckily that worked in my favor, and I went over and I figured it out, and I planned it out. It was a little bit, shook me up a little bit. But what I didn't know is that that was also a necessary step in order for me to remember that this particular place that we moved our breakfast to, I turned it into a little fun breakfast field trip that day, also had a yoga shala that we were going to need, because it also came to my attention the day that everybody was arriving that the yoga shala that I had asked to be reserved many, many, many months in advance, 9 months, I don't even know how many months in advance. And there were no issues last time because I've hosted a retreat in this same exact space before, had been double booked. And the other group that was there using it had already started, and they were in the middle of a teacher training. And so I was like, well, I need a place to do 2-hour practice, because that is the heart of what we were going to be doing in the retreat in terms of our afternoon practice. It's going to be this nice long 2-hour practice. And they're like, maybe we could squeeze you in, you could do like a 90-minute practice. And I was like, what is happening? Like, the shala space, and I advertised it to people, and I can't cut that much time off. Like, I'm gonna have to change all my sequence and my plans. And I was like, but maybe I guess I can make it work. And then they came back and they're like, actually, you can use it for 50 minutes. And at that point, I was like, the universe just went smack, smack across my face. And it's like, oh, you weren't shook enough by our 90-minute reduction. Well, now you get 50 minutes. And so I scrambled and I asked other people to help. I asked the person who was helping me organize to try to find other spaces. And the first place that I was given as an alternative was brutally hot, almost in full sun. And there were these insects, and they're cicadas. I think they are called cicadas. They screech like a car alarm. They're like, ee. So I'm projecting my voice over these insects in a smaller shala that's not the shala that I wanted. It's not with the view that I wanted. It doesn't have the ground, doesn't even have the walls that I wanted for my wall drills, you know? And I have all these people in front of me, and we'll talk about seeing people because that helped a lot for me in this moment. But it was basically the experience that I had was this isn't going to work after that first class. We need to pivot again. And so the place that we went for breakfast the next day, they were nice enough to let me use the shala after that for a really nice after breakfast activity that I had planned. And everybody loved the shala, had nice ocean breeze. It was fresh. It wasn't in the hot sun. The howler monkeys made appearances. It was like bliss. It was like, okay, this is good. You know, this is a better alternative to what I had in mind. And so in all of this experience, it reminded me of something that I've learned recently, which is like if you think about your attention that you have and your energy that you have for an entire day being 100 points, if you give up 30 to 50 of those points, fixating on the things that you can't change and worrying if people are having exactly the experience and the reaction that you had hoped that they would have, it's like you're only left with another 70 to 50% of your actual energy to carry forward with what you have to do. And so I think about that point allocation system. And in those moments, the best thing that we can do, as tempting as it is to fixate on it, is like to actually say, no, you know what? And in the better interest of the entire group, I'm going to allocate my points of attention and awareness to the question of now what, not what could have been and whose fault was it and why this happened and this sucks. None of that, because that at the end of the day is a greater disservice than it is to allocate your energy to reacting to the current situation that you are in. Number 3, know that leading means recognizing other leaders. When I was going to host this retreat solo on my own, one of my big concerns was having this experience of wanting to have somebody else to talk to about how things were going. And actually, as all of this was unfolding, and there's even more details that I'm not going to get into right now, but all of the things that I got hit with the day before the retreat, I really noticed that lack of having somebody else there with me to be like, hey, co-teacher, hey, Katie, which is one of my best friends I've hosted a lot of retreats with. What do you think about this? Like, what should we do? You know, and just talking things through. And it was nice. I will say that both members of my team, Maddie and Gabby, did attend the retreat, but I was also trying to respect, of course, their time and their experience as attendees of the retreat. But I did message them on various occasions like, "Hey girls, can I come up to talk? You know, what do you think about this? Or how is this going for you in the retreat?" So that was really helpful. But that high level, having somebody else to share the responsibility with, I felt. And I think what this also made me realize is that everybody at that retreat had so much to offer. And that's always been the case. This one, especially, most of the attendees were fellow yoga teachers or yoga teacher hopefuls, but we had people share their chants and lead us through chants because I found out that one of the attendees was really, really big into chanting, something that I would not be able to lead our group through. One of the attendees led us through a particular dance that she learned from her family. it was remarkable. One of the attendees brought a really fun card game, and there was this beautiful moment after dinner where everybody was playing this game, super engaged and laughing and almost like shedding some tears because we were going deep, and none of that I planned. None of that had anything to do with me, and yet it was remarkably beautiful. And it was this aha moment where I'm like, sometimes when you're the yoga teacher, when you're the leader, what that means is actually recognizing the talent in everybody around you. It doesn't need to be you in the spotlight. And it felt like this breath of fresh air and also this deep gratitude that, like, what have I done that has resulted in these kind of people being attracted to an experience that I would put together? And that's exactly what a retreat is. It's literally people showing up because of who you are being and who you are. And that's why at the beginning, what I was talking about is that it doesn't need to always be about a performance or about you proving anything or doing anything. Sometimes it's just like that presence and being the catalyst or being the connector. I've noticed a lot of times my role feels a lot like the connector, where I'm just connecting you with amazing guests to listen to their wisdom. That's it. It's not even that it's something that other people couldn't do, but now I'm uniquely positioned in a place where I can. And how beautiful is that? Number 4, embody an abundance mindset. This is so important. I know that retreats are money-making opportunities, and I'm not saying that they should not be. However, in the moment, I have found that you will always be over budget. And if you're not prepared for that mentally and also financially by giving yourself a cushion of about $1,000, I know that sounds like a lot, but seriously, things add up so quickly. Like $1,000 minimum should be the cushion. And that cushion oftentimes is like a third of your profit, a fifth of your profit, maybe. Like that's very, very common. But I always know exactly what will put me into the red. And so I always know going in that it's not a question of me going into the red. It's a question of, yeah, I mean, in this past retreat, for example, I made about half as much as I had intended to, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. In the moment, in the midst of all of the chaotic things that were happening that did not happen, the first time that I hosted a retreat at this place, and also just last minute cancellations and people asking for refunds and all of this sort of fluctuation that was happening, I had sort of this Jesus take the wheel moment where I was like, screw it all. How much is it? Here you go. I'm going to pay it for you, and here's a 20% tip, even though I don't think you were being as helpful as you could have been. I'm feeling generous. And that might sound like I was going kind of crazy and like a little bit kind of insane. And to be honest with you, I was, but that was my way of dealing with it. And I don't regret it. And I'm glad that I did. And this is not to say that I recommend being illogical or irresponsible with money. I think we should value money, absolutely. And each and every time that I spend money on something, I view it as appreciating something. So instead of paying something, this sounds a little bit woo-woo, I know, but instead of paying something, I appreciate it. Like I will literally think about it in this way, like, wow, how cool is it that I have the opportunity to provide a ride for all of these people to this place, and it's going to be fun and it's cool, like this driver is showing up. Wow, I appreciate that. And I'm appreciating it with this dollar amount of money, essentially. But I always know exactly where my line is that would put me into the red. And I know this before I ever launch the retreat. I know exactly how many people need to join in order for me to not go into the red. And I know at a quick glance by looking at the spreadsheet that I've built out that I use for all of my retreats now. So you can build it out one time and use that each and every time, because the list of things that you forget to include in the expenses is real. that is like one of the biggest things that is a practical thing. And I actually have another episode on how to host a yoga retreat. I have got two of them actually, where if you want more of those nitty-gritty details about like the list of things that you might need to include in the expenses, you could check out those episodes. I will link those in the show notes for you as well. But in this entire past retreat, and this has been the case for most of the retreats, truthfully, there was only one person who charged me less than expected. There was only one person who didn't raise the price in the last moment unexpectedly in some way, and who also listened to what I asked for and offered me a lower, more fair price. And this was the person of the replacement shala at Ilang Ilang. And therefore, I am shouting them out. Yes, if you are looking for places in Costa Rica, it's a cool place. And when he told me that, and he came back with a lower price than what I had truthfully told him what I was paying at the other place, and I almost lied. Part of me was like, oh, I don't want to tell him, I'll tell him a lower amount. But I was like, you know what? This is the amount that I'm paying. Truthfully, I think that's a little high. So what can you offer maybe X amount instead? And he listened to that and he said, you know what? Actually, how about this lower amount? And I told him, I looked him in the eye and I said, you've really just won points. Like, I really respect that. I think that's really fair of you. You know that I'm in a sticky situation and you could have totally taken advantage of me and you chose not to. And therefore, I will support you and I will share a little bit about you with my community. It's easy when you're hosting a retreat to just see money flying out the door and you are collecting thousands of dollars, but a small fraction of that is for you. And so managing all of that fluctuation in accounts and things like that and making sure not to spend that money before you earn it, I mean, it's a big responsibility. And I've screwed it up many times. I've gotten to the end and been like, whoo, like that was a close one, but we made it out. But I'm a big believer of what goes around comes around with money, and it takes money and spending money in order to make money, and it's not something to be held on to. It's still something that, truthfully, like, I'm learning a lot myself, but every single day that goes by, I have made money by mistake more times than I can count in the most odd ways that you would never believe. I think I've shared it on the podcast before, but one of the most outrageous ways that I can explain to you is that I booked a stay in a hotel and I used points, so I didn't even pay for it with money. And then, for some reason, after the stay, I saw that the hotel double refunded me. So they paid me 2 times, 2 nights, for a 1 night stay that I didn't even pay for. This amounted to about $500. And so I called. Part of me didn't want to call, truthfully, but I called. I was like, gotta have a good conscience, I'm gonna call. And they never called back and never got back to me and never changed that amount. And it's like, what? What? I'm not suggesting that's going to be my new strategy for making money, but it's just like you don't know what we assume to be true about money in the most logical way of like you must hold on to it and grasp and put a fence around what is yours is has not been the case. It's if I would have had only that belief system, I wouldn't be sitting in front of you today. I can assure you that. Number 5, see the people in front of you. Really see them. Really think about the people. What was helping me so much in this retreat and always helps me is when I'm getting fixated on the imperfect conditions or things not going as I think that they should go, I think about how excited I am to spend time with all of these people who have flown themselves across the world in order to join this experience. If ever you're feeling nervous or like you're a little bit out of sorts, I double down on engaging one-on-one with as many people as you can, asking them things about themselves, learning about them, listening to them, and just kind of getting swept away in the humanness of that. It really, really helps. It's kind of like when you're teaching a yoga class, one of the principal advice that pieces of advice that I was given, because I was actually really bad at this when I started teaching, and I do give now today as well, is see the people in front of you, see the students, really see the people. And to give you an example of how this works for me, one thing that I always do is that I do a pre-retreat survey. And that way, because I don't always know everybody personally, and often at this point, it's like a little less than 50% I will know personally or have seen in class or something like that. But the other ones I don't necessarily know. And so I do a pre retreat survey and I ask not an overwhelming amount of questions, but some questions to kind of get to know people and their practice and what is the work that they really want to do. What are they looking for? That's a good thing to know about people, because whatever they are looking for, it's important to me that they feel seen in that. So that's exactly what I do is I sit down and I read. I actually read very carefully each and every one of those responses, and I push and I make sure I collect all of them, even though it takes some people a little bit longer than others. And then I write them a note. I write them a little card. Nothing too long, but in that card, I make sure that they know that I'm glad that they're there. And I make sure that I acknowledge what it is that they're looking for. And I tell them some form of that, I hope that this time that we spend together can be a catalyst for making this new habit that you mentioned a reality, or a moment to step away from this thing that's bothering you. And I very specifically restate what they have said. This is very intentional because it also helps me remember these things about them when I go to have connection and conversations with them. But I think it's a really nice way to set the tone for the personal aspect of the retreat. And with the risk of going on a bit of a tangent here into something that I cover in detail in my other episodes on how to host a yoga retreat, it's not a travel experience that you're hosting. It's an offering. It's a whole package. I think a lot about the theme, and not everybody makes people listen to them read poetry and has their attendees write for 20 minutes and then share it in small groups or walk around and stare into each other's eyes and like do all of these other things that I do, because I'm always trying to craft a particular pathway of experience for people. Whatever that is that calls you, that excites you about hosting a retreat, I would just go in deeper and deeper and deeper till you get to the root of it and make sure that you have some sort of a central theme. But at a bare minimum, retreats are really moments to connect. That's why people are there. They, just like me, want to be a part of something. And on the subject of speaking about people who are at your retreat, I will also say invite in the people who may not always be able to join your retreats. I highly, highly recommend some sort of a scholarship program for locals, especially if you're hosting in another country, because at the end of the day, that retreat that you're hosting in that country wouldn't even be happening if it weren't for the beautiful people of that country that were serving your group during that entire process. I wish I could take credit for this idea, but truthfully, the idea came from my sister-in-law, who currently resides in Venezuela. If you don't know that, my husband and his family are from Venezuela. Most of them still live there currently. And when I was sharing with her the idea for my first yoga retreat and showing her the info packet and stuff, she was like, wow, this looks so amazing. But wow, like, oh, these kind of experiences aren't for people like me. And when she said that, I felt like this deep sadness and frustration, and this feeling of like, yes, we know that there's unequal access to opportunities like this, especially with the wellness world, but the least that we can do is save space for people. We don't need to be flying people out or really breaking the bank, but save space for people who are already in those areas who would otherwise not be able to pay a ticket in, or maybe they would be able to, but it would be a big sacrifice, or just they wouldn't feel comfortable. Oftentimes they would have no business, quote unquote, joining something like that. They wouldn't even know about its existence. And I hope that that makes sense. Just get in a little bit more cinnamon tea. We're almost done here. We're on the home stretch. Number 6, be bold. Decisively do what needs to be done. Being decisive. Oh, gosh. If there is one quality that is so, so helpful in these situations is the ability to be decisive, because decisions use energy. That's why I think that actually a good leader is decisive and also open to feedback. Decisive, but not like, oh, it's my way or the highway. Like, this is what we're doing. I already decided. That's not what I mean. I mean the ability to step up and take responsibility and make a decision in a timely manner, reaction time essentially, without just going back and forth and having so many different options in their mind that they end up taking no option at all, because choosing not to choose is also a choice. Let us not forget. I say that often, but it's very, very true. And so I have a story for this one as well. Can you believe it? I've got a story for almost every one of the steps. Isn't that wonderful? This story is that it was actually my first time driving in Latin America. This trip, it was the very first time I have driven a car in a Latin American country, which is quite funny that it's taken this long, but usually we are on a bus or something, or somebody else is driving for me. And luckily, this didn't happen while I was driving, but shortly after, we started to hear this buzzing and thumping feeling and sound, and we're like, what the heck? All the tire pressures say everything is fine, there's no sounds, alarms going off, and it was quite a new vehicle, so we were like, "Oh, probably everything's fine, but just pull over just in case." We pull over, and everything indeed is not fine because the rear tire is flat. It is super flat. Now, this is the first time also in my adult life that I've gotten a flat tire, and it was for Simone as well. Years and years and years ago, my dad, on my first car, my little Mazda 3 that I had, showed me how to change the tire. He made me go through the whole process and set up the jack and do all the things, remove the tire. And so I was pulling on that knowledge, and I very quickly realized that that 10 years ago knowledge was not quite fresh enough. And so I digging around, and we find the manual. I set up the emergency triangles, and we just decide to follow step by step everything that is in the little instruction manual. It was like an actual scavenger hunt, because the tire wasn't anywhere where you could just visibly see it. You had to open a little flap and crank and release the tire. It was like a 70-step process, y'all. And then we finally get it all set up, and we could not decide where the right place, we could not tell based on the book where the right place to put the jack was. And that was really shaking me up, because I was like, this is an essential step, we cannot have it slip off. Why is this little ridge that they show in the image not present on our vehicle? And so we tried in different spots, and then at a certain point, we're just like, you know what? This is the place that we're putting it. This is the best that we can do with the knowledge that we have. We crank it all the way up. It does not go up high enough. By this point, I've also scavenged things. I have dug around and pulled out rocks to use as blocks for the tires. And it was nighttime. So luckily there was a random lumber business of some kind nearby. And at first we didn't think there was anybody there. But then luckily we got the guy's attention, and he actually came out and helped us pull the car into level ground and gave us some pieces of wood that we could put underneath to make the jack go up high enough. And we realized that we probably wouldn't have even needed all of that extra stuff, because we did put the jack in the incorrect place. And we truthfully didn't see that because we were rushing so much and so agitated and freaking out that we couldn't see the obvious thing. And so the big disclaimer with the ability to be decisive is that when you've got your mind racing, you've got a super busy brain, you're acting from fear, a lot of times that robs you of the ability to see the very obvious thing that is right smack in front of you. The obvious decision is the one that is most often overlooked. And number 7, aftercare. There's something deeply special about walking into a cafe and seeing a student that you know from a city that you used to live in who has taken a leap of faith to fly halfway across the world to join a group of people of which they know nobody and there to practice with you in an unfamiliar place, totally out of context and totally awesome. The best experience, the most rewarding thing. And when you're on the other side of that experience, because at one point, this is all just a dream, right? And maybe for you right now, you're sitting on that side of it. It's a dream. You're questioning, this girl's crazy. How am I going to invite people to come to this? Who's going to show up? Who's going to travel halfway around the world for me? And I'm here to tell you that they will, as long as you talk about your offer and you create something that you really, really believe in. There's so many tips and tricks and strategies, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, that I'm so burnt out on now because I never had any of those. I don't even think I ever listened to a podcast on how to host a retreat. I just figured it out. And that's one thing that you'll hear, and I'm hearing more and more from everybody that I interview, is it's about our ability to problem solve. Wherever we're trying to get to, it's about that resiliency and having the energy to look into different solutions and figure out, how can I do that? How can I make this work? What are the best ways to talk about my offering? To who can I share this with? Who would be interested in what I have? And you'll find that. And it's so, so special when you realize that that thing that used to be a dream becomes a reality. It's magical. And at the same time, because it is so special, and if you've hosted before, or even just taught like a big class or an event, or you've done anything at all that was kind of hyped up in your mind, I at least have the tendency to overthink what could have been. Sort of retrospective, did I make the right decision? Could I have done better? That constant questioning, which serves to help us improve and to constantly refine. And I always offer a post retreat survey that is anonymous, in which sometimes people do give me really good feedback, and sometimes people have given me some of the harshest, honestly, hard to read things that I've ever read about myself on very, very few occasions, but it has happened in one case where I got a piece of feedback like that last year. But I was having this moment where I was a bit overthinking things, and things had simmered down. We were near our final days in Costa Rica, and I just couldn't shake it. And I was like, I think I should go on a walk. And so Simone and I go on a walk together just to breathe and to come back to presence and to stop overthinking. And as we're walking, we stumble upon this little garden. And it's like a little greenhouse, and it's got lots of different things growing outside of it. And it was almost like from a fairy tale. We're like, hello, is anybody here? And then we hear this voice like, come in. And we go, and we end up talking to this gardener. He's worked for like 16 years, just growing all different kinds of plants and vegetables. He shows us where turmeric and ginger are just growing, like the roots are so big, they're just bursting out of the surface. And he gives us mint and different things that are good for being calming, and we make a tea. But even before that, he's giving me all of these plants and he's telling me to smell them. And he doesn't know what's wrong, right? I'm not visibly upset. I'm just internally in turmoil a bit. But he starts to give me all of these plants and I start to smell all of them. And it's like my senses, it's like a scent therapy from God. I mean, it was just remarkable, the whole experience. It was so mundane and average and yet so beautiful. We wandered around this garden for probably like an hour, and he just showed us all the different things that he grows and all the different things that things are used for. And it was so magnificent. And it was really the cherry on the top of the entire experience and the entire lesson of this episode on retreats, and also, honestly, of this podcast, which is that there's a great beauty in the things that we cannot predict, that we never could have imagined. It's just like the episode I made recently on mysteriously things fall into place. They do. And that's what we're here to stay present enough to experience them. So I hope that if you are going into dreaming about your retreat, that you begin to take some action steps and in a deep sense of presence and intentionality behind it, knowing that when you can stay connected to that sense of presence, anything is going to be possible for you. You have everything that you need, and you know where you're going. Deep down, you know where you're going. So it's time that you go there and that you bring people with you as well. I know that some of you have actually hosted retreats in the past based on the prior episode that I created on how to host a yoga retreat. So if you do, I want to know, share it with me. And yeah, I'm always rooting for you. I believe in you. I wouldn't be here speaking these words if that was not the case. And I'm sending you all of my love and all of my energy. I will catch you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.